This is Serhiy Vysotsky, and today we're talking about a word that makes many people smile skeptically. Budgeting. I'll give you practical cheat codes and life hacks that actually work. I will show you with real-life case studies, sometimes funny, but more often instructive, how companies lost money and missed out on brilliant opportunities due to planning errors. And most importantly, I'll tell you how to avoid these pitfalls. You are now watching the first video in our series on how to genuinely level up your business management. And possibly, by implementing budgeting, advance your own career. Want to learn the most fatal mistakes that textbooks don't mention? Get a tool that really works? Then watch this video carefully to the end. And of course, subscribe. Let's get started. Alright, let's cover the terms, but in plain English. Many people think budgeting is just about making plans. Far from it. It's a complete management cycle. First, we plan where we want to go. Second, we act and monitor implementation. Are we on track? We do a reality check. Third, we analyze why we deviated, what worked, and what didn't. Fourth, we adjust, changing our actions or the plan itself. And so on, in a cycle. It's a living process, not a report that just gathers dust, and certainly not dogma. And here's an important insight from a practitioner right away: forget about 100% budget execution. Life will always throw you a curveball. A budget will never be executed exactly as you planned. A budget is more of a map and a compass than a rigid track you can't deviate from. Without comparing the plan against the actual results, against what is really happening, budgeting is also a completely useless exercise. Then the plans become just another stack of paper. A plan without actuals is just playing at budgeting. It's like putting an address into your GPS and then turning it off right after. And the budget itself isn't just about money, it's an action plan expressed in numbers. Imagine you're planning a road trip to a mountain resort. You'd naturally rough out an estimate of how much gas is in the tank, how much you'll need for the round trip, whether you'll need to refuel, where and how much money that will cost. You'd also think about food for the trip. Notice, we already have 3 budgets here. First, a fuel consumption budget. Second, a budget for fuel expenses. And you can't make the second one without the first. And the third budget is for food. There are 3 key secrets to a successful budget. First, a budget is not a monolith. It's like a tree, made up of many interconnected plans: sales, production, procurement, advertising. But for an IT startup and for a massive factory, this tree will look completely different. There is no one-size-fits-all template. I've faced the task of implementing a budgeting process in an organization many times. But even though it was the same me, each time it involved completely different actions, a different structure for the budgeting process itself, and a different set and quality of documents. The budget serves your goals. Are you planning a market takeover? Do you need resources for aggressive growth? Do you need an austerity budget? Your budget must answer the question, what are we doing right now? Even the perfect system that worked for you yesterday might not fit, or might even hinder, the tasks you face today. Third, the budget must be flexible. The world changes faster than we can get plans approved. If your budget is set in stone, it will become an albatross around your neck. You absolutely need the ability to adapt as you execute it. Imagine you budgeted for advertising on a social network, but it just didn't resonate with the audience. A flexible budget lets you quickly reallocate funds, while a rigid one means you just lose money. Why is budgeting necessary? Imagine you're a sales director. You plan to achieve incredible sales success this month. Thanks to your ability to close deals and negotiate with clients, you decide to double sales. And you pull it off. Clients are signing contracts, you proudly return to the office with a stack of documents and hand them off for fulfillment. Success? Nope. The trouble starts almost immediately. The warehouse doesn't have the required products, and clients are unhappy. You immediately call the production director. In response to your questions, he reasonably notes that he had no information about the contracts you signed. But he'll immediately start production on part of the orders. To the question, why only part? He explains that for some orders, even though the purchasing director will sign supply contracts right away, the suppliers won't deliver the raw materials and components for another month and a half. The CFO adds to the situation, saying there isn't enough money for all these actions, because ramping up production requires additional financial resources that nobody mentioned. By the way, you can see my video on this called "How Much Money Do You Need to Launch Production?" So, it turns out we don't have the products in stock, production can't cover the deficit, and on top of all that, there's no money. Meanwhile, the clients are expecting their orders tomorrow. In other words, working without a budget is like driving in fog without headlights. It will most likely end in a crash. So, can you get by without a budget at all? The answer is simple. Of course, you can. Plenty of companies operate without a formal budget. And they're fine, they survive. But the question is how, and for how long and how happily. Let's be honest about when budgeting really isn't needed. Or almost isn't. Situation 1, Startup Chaos. In the first months of a startup's life, everything is cobbled together. The direction changes every day. A formal budget will only get in the way. Speed and flexibility are more important here. Case 2. Authoritarian leadership. When the business hasn't changed in years, or the director decides everything themselves, development is either not planned, or the plans live inside the director's head. There's no one to use the budget, it becomes an unnecessary formality. Case 3. Firefighting mode. An acute crisis, there's no money, decisions are made by patching holes. This is no time for strategic planning, you just need to survive. A payment calendar is the most you can manage. And now, case number 4. The most insidious one. Case 3. When top management doesn't want budgeting. They say it's bureaucracy, it gets in the way of work. This means only one thing, an unwillingness to have transparency and control. Believe me, I've seen situations where, after implementing proper budgeting, the owner was tearing his hair out over what was happening right under his nose. Another golden rule, budgeting without buy-in from the top is a sham. If the CEO or owner has no sincere intention of using this tool in their work, the venture is doomed to fail before it even begins. Now let's talk about implementing budgeting. But first, let's debunk a few myths that get in the way. Myth 1. Budgeting kills flexibility and creativity. On the contrary, a clear budget provides guaranteed resources for experiments and new ideas. An employee engaged in creative work is now assured that the necessary resources for their work have been allocated. The budget simply channels creativity in the right direction. Myth 2. Budgeting is about cutting costs. Again, no. A budget is about the effective allocation of resources. For cuts, for growth, and for investment. It helps you spend smarter, not less. Myth 3. It's too complicated, takes too long, and is only for giants. You can start simple. Even a basic budget cobbled together in Excel is better than nothing. The complexity should match the size and goals of your business. You don't need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Myth 4. Our business is too unpredictable for budgeting. It's precisely in this case that having some resources to react to unusual events will save the business from an emergency. True, there's also the option that you don't really have a business yet, but rather the initial chaotic state of a startup. In that case, come back to budgeting when you become a business. When should you start budgeting? When the business reaches a certain size, one person, even the most capable, cannot cover absolutely all aspects and get into all the details. The inevitable delegation of authority begins. But when a person is responsible not for the whole business, but only for a separate part of it, their interests inevitably diverge from the interests of the business as a whole, even if they are pointed in the same direction. You can have smart and talented tech specialists who, nevertheless, without limits, behave like a teenager with their dad's credit card, not to mention the potential for abuse. The solution in this situation is budgeting. Its purpose is not at all to collect numbers for some vague plan. Budgeting helps answer the question of where we will be in the near future, whether we will have enough resources, and at the same time, it helps us understand if we are on the right track, if we are moving in the right direction, if we have systemic problems, and what actions we can and must take in the near future. What does budgeting give you? Transparency. You see where the money is really going, not just for business, but specifically what it's on and how much. Manageability. You can influence a situation before it becomes critical. See a deviation? You react. You should see a cash gap 2 weeks out, not when you have no money to pay. That's manageability. Control. The risks of accidental, and not so accidental, misuse of funds are sharply reduced. A system of checks and balances is created. It helps to avoid both accidental overspending because we really need it and deliberate abuse, which I'll tell you about now. Coordination. Departments stop pulling in different directions. Everyone understands the common goals and how their actions affect them. So that marketers don't sell pipe dreams that production can't make and procurement can't get materials for. Remember the budgeting cycle? Without it, these are all just nice words. We plan, we monitor, we analyze, we adjust. And now, some real stories so you can really feel this. Story 1, Chasing Volume. A real meeting with the CEO that I witnessed. The production director reports on overfulfilling the production plan in monetary terms. But in terms of the product mix, the situation is completely different. Few of the high-demand items were produced, and almost a quarter of the output volume will sit in the warehouse and will take about 8 months to sell. The purchasing director proudly reports that he managed to buy raw materials at a very low price, enough for almost 2 years. In short, everyone did a great job. Then everyone turns to the CFO with the question, so why is our cash situation so sad? Since people with different levels of financial literacy are watching me, I'll explain. The top management spent the company's working capital as they saw fit, and then decided to blame the CFO for the shortage, for not ensuring its availability. But the result was frozen cash, lost profits from not selling high-demand items, and unhappy clients. Story 2, The Fox in the Henhouse. In an IT company, one person planned payments, made payments, and handled the accounting. How quickly do you think he realized he could skim a little off the top? The separation of execution and control functions is the alpha and omega of budgeting. A budget helps build a system of mutual control and checks and balances. If this hadn't been discovered, almost 0.25% of turnover would have been leaking out in an unknown direction. What does budgeting do for employees? We talked about the benefits for the business. But what's in it for the employees? Is it just a headache? I'll answer that. When you have an approved budget for your tasks, you can work in peace, instead of running around begging for every penny. If you are a business line manager or a department head, you have specific tasks. You definitely need resources to accomplish them. Therefore, having expenses in the budget intended for solving your tasks allows you to focus on getting them done, rather than begging management for what should have been provided anyway. Clear rules of the game. A budget provides clarity. It's clear what the goals are, what the resources are, what the limitations are. It makes it easier to plan your work. Objective assessment. If there is a plan, a budget, then it's easier to evaluate the work's results, both for the manager and for the employee themselves. Coordination and standards. A budget helps implement unified standards. Whether it's purchasing computers for different departments or equipment maintenance. Less chaos and incompatibility. If the technical director, marketing director, and IT director review and approve budget expenses in their areas, it ensures a unified, centralized approach to each type of expense, making it manageable and aligned with the company's strategy. The technical director will ensure that the right equipment is being purchased, installed, and repaired. The IT director will be confident that the hardware being purchased meets infrastructure requirements. And so on. All of this eliminates unnecessary conflicts about who owes what to whom. So, budgeting isn't just boring numbers, it's an aid for top management and a control system at the same time. Now we understand what it is, why it's needed, and what it gives us. Next, we'll answer the question of how to build it, where to start, what pitfalls to avoid, whether it will be in Excel or a grandiose system. But I'll talk about that in the second part. For now, write in the comments whether you've faced problems due to a lack of budgeting, or, conversely, if a broken budgeting system got in the way of working normally. I'll comment if I can. See you next time.